What's up, Packer fans? Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. What a day. What just happened? What a whirlwind. That escalated quickly. Of course, it is reported now that Aaron Rodgers is returning to the Green Bay Packers. And of course, it's been crazy just to keep up with, from going to Packer shareholder meeting to Ian Rappaport's report to Schefter's report to the report from Trey Wingo that the Packers may be trying to acquire Randall Cobb, to what this means for Devontae Adams. And I'm going to do my absolute best to cover this today and go one by one and discuss what each of this means, each of these news items means for the Packers moving forward, what it means for Aaron Rodgers, etc. But man, how did we get to this point? I made the joke that if you've ever seen Burn After Reading, where at the end they're like, what did we just learn from all of this? And he says, F if I know. That's how I feel right now. What did we learn from this entire fiasco? I'm not sure. We're here now. We're going to do the best we can to make sense of all of it, but I'm not sure anyone's ultimately going to be able to. It's not that it was much ado about nothing. There was obviously a divide between Rodgers and the Packers. It has now been closed to some extent. There's still a likely divorce in 2022, which we'll get to in more in just a moment, but man, the toxicity from draft day up until really today, and I'm sure there's still going to be some moving forward, has been absolutely crazy. And frankly, I'm hopeful that we can now to some extent put this behind us for now. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean that next offseason couldn't be as crazy or crazier, which is insane to think about, but we are moving forward with Aaron Rodgers. At this point, who knows what report's going to come out next, but as I'm recording this now, as Aaron Rodgers is a member of the Green Bay Packers for the 2021 season, which I think everyone can exhale a little bit. I think for the most part, people are excited about that news, but let's kind of go over what it means. And before I get there, I do want to say it was such an incredible juxtaposition to draft day, right? Where draft day, this news went from 0 to 100, where we were starting to get some whispers that maybe Rodgers wasn't happy, and all of a sudden the Schefter tweet, and then all of a sudden the Schlereth tweet that he's going to be a Bronco, and everything exploded on draft day, and it was insane. And today was almost like the reverse of that, right? It was like the backtracking of it, where Mark Murphy at the shareholders meeting is like, we're optimistic that he's going to be back, and then again, the Rappaport tweet that it's leaning that Rodgers is going to return to the Packers, and then it just went from there. It was like, again, the exact opposite of what happened on draft day, from again him exiting Green Bay on draft day, him coming back to Green Bay on shareholders day, if you will. The juxtaposition between the two was incredible with how fast it worked and how the news spread and how everyone was going crazy on Twitter on both days. It was really, again, an interesting juxtaposition there. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it seems, if everything is reported correctly, which asterisk, I guess, up to this point, but I believe for the most part it probably has been, the Rodgers last dance is real. The last polka, if you will. This, by all accounts, seems like it will be Aaron Rodgers' last season. Now, let me detail. This is from Adam Schefter, ESPN. Make sure to go check out his article on what this means and where they're kind of at with this, with the negotiations. Here are some of the concessions that Green Bay has sort of made, if you will, to get Green Bay to come back for this upcoming season. They voided his 2023 season. Now, myself made the mistake, as well as I saw others made the mistake, that they were thinking that was the 2022 void, which means that he would play this season and his contract would void and he could sign with any team. That is not the case. It is a 2023 void, voiding the last year of his deal, meaning he would still have this year and next year under team control with the Green Bay Packers. They're also, according to Adam Schefter, reporting that no future franchise tags would be allowed, any transition tags, anything like that. So if Rodgers were to play out these next two seasons, he would be a true free agent in 2023, and the Packers couldn't do any sort of franchise tag or transition tag or anything like that at that point to keep him. He would be a true unrestricted free agent and able to sign with any team. All right. Another concession, or I guess, agreement of this is that there will be no loss in income for Aaron Rodgers, and they are going to make some adjustments to his deal. So what this means ultimately is that the Packers are going to push more money into future seasons, probably put a void season after 2022 to push out cap as much as possible, still save some money for this upcoming season so you can do the practice squad, maybe sign one more player that's out there, maybe a Randall Cobb, we'll get to that in a moment. Do some things now, and it'll push everything down the road a little bit more, but that will not change Aaron Rodgers' ultimate value of his deal. Again, that's what's being reported by Adam Schefter. It's also been noted that there are mechanisms in place to address Rodgers' issues with the team. Decipher of that what you will, but obviously there are some issues that he has that he wants to see resolved. We'll see how that works. The biggest thing, of course, though, that has come out of this is that the Packers have agreed to review Rodgers' situation at the end of this upcoming season. And this is, again, per Adam Schefter, they will trade him if Rodgers feels the same way and will give him freedom to decide where he wants to play in 2022. So that would be a major concession by the Packers to some extent. Again, more on that in a moment. But let's run down these one by one and exactly what they mean. So again, void in 2023 and no future tags allowed. This doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot for the Packers. This would be an ideal situation for the Packers if it ever mattered, where they would get him not only this season, but next season on his deal as well. And then he'd be a free agent. Now, maybe ideal is the wrong word because now it's 1 year less and they potentially would get nothing in return from. But I think if you would have told the Packers at any point this offseason that they were still going to get 2 years out of Aaron Rodgers, they probably would have been elated. They probably would have been happy with 1 year, which again, more on that in a moment. But I don't think that the franchise tag and the 2023 void are ultimately going to amount to much because I ultimately believe he will be traded in 2022. More to come. All right, adjusted for more cap room with no loss of income. Again, that just means that Green Bay has more space now. It also is likely to mean that it's less likely that the Packers keep Rodgers. The more money in 2022, the more money that they continue to push down the road, the more difficult it is to keep Rodgers' exorbitant contract on the books next season. Just based on where they're at financially already, it would be very, very tough for them to keep Aaron Rodgers in 2022. They would have to do a large extension, push things out even further. So by doing this now, Aaron Rodgers and his agent know that, again, this increases the likelihood that the Packers and Rodgers are actually going to be on the same page in 2022, that it makes the most sense to move on from Rodgers and trade him in 2022. So I actually think that while this helps the Packers in 2021 and it gives the Packers some more freedom, I think Rodgers and David Dunn, his agent, are probably very happy as well. If the ultimate goal is to get out of Green Bay next season, I think that actually advances that cause as well. So it makes sense in a way for both sides to kind of put that verbiage into this potential deal. Now, it also says that, they're going to trade him in 2022 if he feels the same way. All right, I think that's fairly self-explanatory that if he is still frustrated and angry with the team and not happy, that they will revisit things and they will help him with a trade. Now, I think the interesting verbiage with all of this is that they will allow him to decide where he wants to play. Now, my guess is, this is just me totally, guessing what this might mean, is my guess is they may give him a no trade clause. And what I mean by that is it'll allow Rodgers to have some say over where he can't go, right? So if they want to trade him to, some awful team, he can say no. My guess is he'll get a full no trade clause, or at least give a list of teams that he'd be welcome to be trading to. But my guess is it'll be a trade clause so that it has to go through Rodgers, because he doesn't know next season which teams are going to be good and bad at this point, who's going to be the coaches, who are going to be the players, things like that. So my guess is they'll give him a no trade clause, and that will allow Rodgers to veto any potential trades. And I think it'll be a handshake sort of deal to say, hey, we want to get the most out of you that, from the trade that we can. But we're also just not going to ship you anywhere, so that we're going to work together to find the best ultimate home for you. And again, more on that in a moment, because I do believe wholeheartedly that is what will happen in 2022, and we're going to get to that. So I don't think he's going to have freedom to decide it. I don't think he can say, I'm going to go to the Vikings or the Bears, and the Packers are like, okay, that works for us. I don't see that being the case. My guess is it'll be working together on a team that makes sense for both sides, where Green Bay can get a fair deal, but Rodgers will be somewhere that he wants to be. That would be my guess. And then as far as mechanisms in place to review Rodgers' issues with the team, make of that what you will. But the report was going back that one of Rodgers' frustrations with how they traded former players when they were, whether it was traded, cut, released. And then Trey Wingo reports, amongst others, including Tom Silverstein, just at the end of the day here, that this is a legitimate thing that Rodgers wants Randall Cobb back, and that the Packers are working to potentially try and get Randall Cobb. Now, this is maybe the most interesting aspect, is probably the nicest way to put it, of this entire day. Now, That's probably false. The most interesting aspect, of course, is that Rodgers is returning to the team, but this is the most out of left field, where did this sort of come from sort of thing that came out of today. And what I mean by that is Randall Cobb still has 2 years left on his deal. And even after a trade with the contract as is right now, he would count $8.5 million towards the Packers this season, which is money they don't have. And you can say, well, Andy Rodgers is going to restructure his deal to give the cap this season. That's all good and well, but that's $8.5 million then that comes from future salary caps for a receiver that you basically have drafted. I know maybe Amari Rodgers isn't Randall Cobb yet, or may never be Randall Cobb, but the difference probably between a young, Amari Rodgers and a aging Randall Cobb, probably not that great. Plus you have a fairly solid wide receiver core all around. Like, how does Randall Cobb exactly fit into that? And no matter what, like, you already at that point would be keeping MVS and Devontae Adams and Randall Cobb and Allen Lazard and Amari Rodgers. You've got 5 guys right there. You probably keep 6, but now none of those first 5 are probably playing like gunner on special teams or anything like that. Devin Funchess isn't going to do that. EQ maybe a little bit. Like, I don't know. Like that gives you like 7 deep of wide receivers you would think would probably make the roster. Now, maybe somebody like Equanimeous St. Brown is included in that deal, which could easily make some sense for both sides if that were to happen. But the 8.5 million mark is really perplexing. Now, there are ways that the Texans could restructure that deal so it's more signing bonus and less base contract. And what that would do is mean that the Texans would pay a much larger part of that contract and the Packers would get them at a much cheaper cost. But what that's going to do is cost Green Bay more in compensation. So the Texans might say, hey, we'll eat a good part of this contract. We know we're not competing for a championship anyway. We were planning on paying this anyway. So you can take a little piece of the salary cap, but then we want more in return for taking on that cap space. So that's a possibility as well, but I don't know how likely it is. Now, maybe it's like maybe a 4th round pick for the Texans to take on the majority of that contract, and the Packers get Randall Cobb, make Rodgers happy, they get him at a cheap cost. Maybe that could make sense, right? But a 4th round pick is a fairly solid pick for a player that's aging that, again, you don't really need on the roster. So that is a completely out of left field interesting aspect that is going to have to be sorted out. And I'm not sure how it all works, but adding an $8.5 million contract to this upcoming season, I guarantee you is not, for Randall Cobb nonetheless, I guarantee you is not something that Brian Gutekunst in this front office wants to do or wanted to do. Is it a great story, Randall Cobb coming back to Green Bay? Yeah, I think, of course it is, right? Like, a lot of people are going to be very excited to see Randall Cobb in a Packers jersey again if that happens. But from a GM management standpoint, there's a lot perplexing around that. So let's look at both sides of this deal. What does Aaron Rodgers get from this deal? Well, he gets some concessions. Maybe he gets to play with Randall Cobb for another season and Devontae Adams and Mercedes Lewis and those players that he wanted to play with for one more season. And more importantly, he gets control of his exit. He was a player who was under contract for 3 more seasons, and Green Bay seemed like they were willing to call his bluff every step of the way and say, hey, you're a Green Bay Packer. And, well, again, I'm going to get to this in a moment. I believe Green Bay was going to trade him in 2022, or at least leaning in that direction anyway. Now Rodgers has not only say that if he wants that to happen, it's going to happen, again, according to reports, but also that if it happens, he has some control over where he goes next season. If he were to be traded this offseason right now, Green Bay could say, we're shipping you wherever. We're going to ship you to Houston. Good luck in Houston. Right? We're going to ship you wherever. Maybe Miami, which maybe isn't that bad of a situation, but maybe he wants to be on the West Coast and Miami's literally the exact opposite of where he wants to be, right? So there's a million different things that Green Bay could have done. Now Rodgers has some control of that. So he gets control over his exit. He gets control over where he goes to some extent. I think there's some wins for Rodgers here. For the Packers, a ton of wins in a vacuum, theoretically. So, 1, they get another year at a chance at a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. They get compensation in 22 if they do, in fact, trade him in 2022. They give Jordan Love a starting point, right? So, again, if this comes to fruition and Rodgers is traded in 2022, which, again, I likely is going to be the case, that gives Jordan Love another year to prepare, which again is, I think, another win for this, is that Love gets more time to prepare for his eventual start. But also, you're basically telling Jordan Love right now, saying, 2022 is your team. Do whatever you need to do to get ready, but 2022 is going to be your team. So I think you give him a true starting date. You give him one more year to prepare, which I think is going to be beneficial for him. And then ultimately for the Packers, you have an out as well. They needed the salary cap space in 2022. It was always likely to me that Rodgers was going to be traded in 2022. And now they have the ability to do so. And Rodgers is the one that seems to want the same thing. To me, Green Bay in a vacuum won this deal. But what do I mean when I say in a vacuum? And the reason I say this is, what Aaron Rodgers are they getting? Does he want to be here? Does he want to be the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers? I think that's a big question. If Aaron Rodgers is a disgruntled, lame duck quarterback who knows he's going to be gone next season, what does that mean? And I saw people respond to me on Twitter and say, what, do you think he's not going to go out and compete and play at the highest level and screw over his teammates? Of course not. Not what I'm saying at all. Of course, he has a ton of respect for his legacy. He has a ton of respect for the history of the Green Bay Packers. He has a ton of respect for his teammates and his coaches. There's no way that he's going to go out and give anything but 110%. But if he's upset and he's not happy with his situation and he now feels like maybe I don't have anything to lose, what happens with big moment, fourth quarter, 3rd and 10, and Matt LaFleur says, we're going to run this play, and Rodgers says, nope, I'm running this instead? How difficult of a situation could this end up being for Matt LaFleur if Rodgers just goes completely rogue and says, I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to do whatever I want to do, call with the plays that I want to call, and just kind of, again, go rogue, go God mode, whatever you want to call it, and yeah, do that. Like, there could easily be situations where if Rodgers doesn't care, if he's like, I don't care what happens down the road, I don't care what happens with any of this, I just want to win now, and I'm going to take things into my own hands, that could obviously cause issues. And if he's disgruntled and he's not happy, does that, again, spread to other players? Like, all of those sort of things are still a concern. So this isn't a magic bullet for the Packers. They don't just get... Everything's not like magically perfect. I do think that the Packers ultimately won this and really getting what they wanted from the start, one more year of Aaron Rodgers and then the ability to move on next season. But I don't think this is still like, I don't think this is how Green Bay would have drew it up in the sand and say, oh, we just got to, piss Aaron Rodgers off. And then once he's pissed off, we'll get him to come back. And then once he's angry, he's going to play better. And I don't think that's how you draw it up, right? I think you would prefer him to be very happy in Green Bay and eventually, have those conversations and moving on at a later point. But I do think Green Bay ultimately kind of gets what they want. And yes, I do believe wholeheartedly that this will be the last dance for Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay in 2021 and that he will be gone in 2022. I think you start putting the tea leaves together, right? The last dance photo that Rodgers posted on Instagram, he knew that this is one last year in Green Bay. That there's nothing to read between the lines there. When you post that and then these concessions come out a couple days later that Rodgers has the ability to move on in 2022, he knows he's gone in 2022. You look at the finance of the Packers, there's always a way, right? There's always money in the banana stand, if you will. There's always a way to make things work. Logically and realistically, it makes so much more sense for Green Bay to move on from Aaron Rodgers logistically, salary cap wise, all of the drama that has taken place this offseason to not do that again next offseason. Everything for the Packers, to an extent, even before all of this happened, pointed to a Rodgers exit in 2022, which is why he wasn't happy in the first place. A big part of it. He wanted to be a Packer for life. They drafted Jordan Love. They got themselves into some financial, issues, a large part due to COVID and the situations that happened there with the salary cap going down. And now the most logical situation was moving on from Rodgers in 2022. Jordan Love, at some point, they're going to want to give him the opportunity to show what he can do. They drafted him as a first-round pick, and there was always likely to be, as Aaron Rodgers mentioned a day or two after he got drafted, there was always likely to be an expiration date on Aaron Rodgers once that pick was made. And the likeliest expiration date, according to myself and anyone else that you wanted to listen to basically at that time, was 2022, which again, Rodgers knew, which is what partly led to his angst and frustration with the team. So there's the out there. The Packers need that out. Rodgers wants that out. It makes sense financially for both sides. Jordan Love likely going to be as ready as he's ever going to be to play in 2022 and take over as the next quarterback of the Packers. Yes, everything in my being would lead me to believe that Aaron Rodgers will not be the Packers quarterback in 2022 and that this is in fact the last run as the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. So enjoy it. I mean, I think ultimately that's good news, and it's going to be one heck of a season to track, and just starting with training camp and everything, and to see how this all plays out. I mean, talk about, if you're in it for the storytelling or the drama or whatever, like this is a insanely interesting season for football fans, for Packer fans, etc., and how this ultimately plays out. Now, I'm never willing to say that never say never, right? There's always ways that things could maybe work out with Rodgers and the Packers, and who knows, right? But everything that I see and everything that I believe, and based off of the reports, again, would lead me to believe that Rodgers will be traded in 2022, and the Packers, for the most part, are likely going to be happy to do that, maybe dependent on how they feel about Jordan Love at that time. Last but not least, Davante Adams. Where does this leave him? Now, with Rodgers maybe restructuring some money, maybe Green Bay has some more money to put up front in that deal. I ultimately don't think this affects it all that much. I think, to me, Davante Adams wanted to be paid as the top wide receiver in the NFL, and that's still the disconnect. And we talked about that the other day. Is Hopkins, DeAndre Hopkins, the top contract? Is it actually the Julio Jones deal? And again, there's a $5 million difference there. So I think that is still a concern. But I think Rodgers or no Rodgers, I think if the Packers are willing to meet Davante Adams at his contract, I think he signs that no matter what. So I don't know that this matters a ton, but it definitely doesn't hurt. And again, it could free up some space. And it does sound like there were some reports that with Rodgers being back this season, that this now could expedite the Packers trying to get Davante Adams done as that next potential deal. So time will tell on that as well. The biggest thing, Aaron Rodgers is back. As of now, he will be your quarterback for 2021, and we will get our last dance. We will get our last polka. And again, it's going to be an incredibly fun story to track. And it's going to be great to see Aaron Rodgers and Green, because let's be real, like no matter where you fall and everything, it would have been some level of disappointment if he never got to wear green and gold one more time, and the fans never got to see, know that, all right, this is maybe it for Aaron Rodgers. Because I don't think, until his post-game press conference after Tampa Bay, I don't think anyone was thinking at the time that was going to be Rodgers' last game in green and gold. I don't think anyone was thinking that going in. So to all of a sudden have that, lose that game, and then never play for Green Bay again, I think that would have been a shock to a lot of people's systems. So to get this last year and to see him in green and gold for one last season, no matter what happens, I think is a win. And I think it's going to be, something that a lot of Packer fans will be thankful for and will cherish, to get to see him one last season in green and gold, if in fact that does end up being the case. That's going to do it for me today. Again, it's been a heck of a day. I appreciate you all for listening. As always, make sure to subscribe. It is going to get crazy. Training camp is kicking off. Rodgers is going to show up at some point. It's going to get nuts, so you're going to want to make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I'll be right back here tomorrow. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.